this conference on financing metropolitan governments in developing countries. As you know, we at ICRIER have a thrust area for research on urbanization, and we have been having a series of what we call capacity building workshops, mostly based on whatever knowledge generation there is within India and best practice sharing that we bring together. But since we are a new program at ICRIER, just about 2 years old, we are trying to reach out and access resource persons from outside of the country who are known to be experts, and we feel now we are ready to go beyond the borders and gain better understanding of how we should be responding to a growing challenge that we face of urbanization in India. I'm also, first of all, I'm very grateful to Dr. Johannes Linn and Professor Roy Bahl for volunteering to share their knowledge in this area of metropolitan financing, an area in which they are recognized experts with many, many, many years of both knowledge gaining and actual traveling around the world, so having a feel for what is going on in different countries. So I'm very grateful to both of you and to Lincoln Institute, which has allowed you to come out here and share your knowledge with us. Friends, I have one more good news to give you, and that is that our ICRIER's urban team's long-time benefactor and friend, Dr. P.K. Mohanty, who is currently Chief Secretary of Andhra Pradesh and who for a long time was Housing Secretary in the Government of India, and most importantly, at a time when I was thrust into the area of leading a government's committee on urban infrastructure and services. Both Dr. Mohanty and a former secretary then, Mr. Anil Baijal, and Mr. Ravichandar, three of them are sitting here, who really provided tremendous support and encouragement for us novices to get on to an area which was new. It's now been 5 years, and you know how things change. People are calling us experts. We have to keep reminding them that we only do intellectual arbitrage. We are building our own capacity as we organize these workshops and carry on with our research. I have my young team, which is sitting at the back, who had the benefit of interacting with Dr. Johannes Linn yesterday. So with this short introduction, I'm just, I don't think our two principal presenters need any introduction. Their introduction is already in your folders, and I now invite them both to make a presentation, after which we will have 2 discussants, and then we'll make the session interactive. So with those introductory words, and also saying that at 10:45, I will not make, I'll give up my 10 minutes of chairperson's comments, and you'll have to cut into your tea time. We may even serve you tea here. At 10:45 sharp, we are going to be joined by another 10 or 12 people from the government, and we are going to be launching the new book of Dr. P.K. Mohanty. That will be from 10:45 to 11:15 or 11:30. So with those few remarks, let me invite Johannes to please begin.
Good morning, everybody. It's a wonderful pleasure to be back in New Delhi, and with so many experts, eminent experts on the topic of urban and metropolitan finance. Roy and I are delighted to be able to be here to exchange experience with you, to learn from each other, and I look forward to this day. I'm particularly grateful to Isha, to you, Isha Ahluwalia, and to ICRIER for hosting this event. And I'm also grateful to the Lincoln Institute, who made the book that you have copies of possible, because they actually supported this financially, and it also made it possible for Roy and I to be here today. So I look forward to a lively discussion. I want to give you a little bit of background on the nature of the exercise of the book that you have in front of you, and Roy will then say a bit just by way of overview of some of perhaps the main takeaways from the book. Of course, we'll have opportunity later in the day to talk more in detail on specific aspects. But let me start by giving you a little background about the motivation, the focus, and the approach of the book. Some of you may be aware that some 20 years ago, Roy and I published a book called Urban Public Finance in Developing Countries with Oxford University Press. That book had been 20 years in the making. And so when it was finally published, we were delighted and said we'd done our job. Well, 20 years later, roughly, Roy and I happened to be talking, and we said, well, you know, that book still seems to be the only one of its kind that's around. Now, nobody else has sort of updated it. Maybe it's our job to do so. So we actually thought, well, how are we going to do this? We didn't think we had another 20 years of sort of rubber left on our tires, so to do another big book over 20 years. So instead, we took a very different approach. What we did is basically we crowdsourced the exercise, and we asked a number of our expert colleagues around the globe, one of them, Professor Pete, is here, to come together and actually produce a book that, when you look at it, combines 500 years of professional expertise, and frankly, I think in that regard, probably does a better job in pulling together what we know about urban and metropolitan public finance. However, we also thought that we have a somewhat different focus from the previous book. As you remember, the previous book was really in the mainstream of public finance. It looked very much at public revenue mobilization in urban areas and of urban local government. This time, what we thought is we focus specifically on metropolitan areas because, as I will come back to explain, we believe metropolitan areas are actually sort of key game changers in the development process around the globe. So in a sense, we narrowed it down, but we also decided to broaden the focus a bit. Besides looking at the traditional public finance topics, which is the middle 4 chapters of the book, we also have an introductory chapter by Shahid Yusuf on the role of metropolitan areas as drivers of growth and modernization. We have 3 chapters on governance, political economy, and city management each. We have 3 chapters on specific themes: infrastructure finance, slum improvement, and external aid for urban areas. We have 3 city case studies or country case studies: Mumbai, Sao Paulo, and China. And throughout, we threw in more of a comparison with the experience in industrial countries than we'd done in our previous book. So it's really quite a different exercise. We're very excited about this. It's a sort of a tapestry now of views and insights and experience, which we see as really very exciting indeed. We also brought in a co-editor, Deborah Wetzel, who in a sense is the next generation of urban and public finance experts, and we hope that she, 20 years from now, will sort of put out the next edition, and hopefully with the help of the younger generation in the back here. So this is the longer term vision that we now have to establish hopefully a tradition here. Before I hand off to Roy to say a few more words on the substance of the book, let me briefly, however, say a few words about the role of metropolitan areas. You all are aware of the basic UN projections, demographic projections: world population to grow between 2012 and 2050 from 7 to 9 billion, and virtually all the additional 2 billion will be in urban areas in developing countries. The number of mega cities, that's cities above 10 million people, will go from 19 cities in 2007 to an estimated 27 cities in 2025. with 10% of the world's population. And 21 of these megacities will be in developing countries, and indeed some of them will be here in India, of course. By 2025, in addition, there'll be 48 cities with populations between 5 and 10 million people, 3/4 of them in developing countries. And we know that about a quarter of GDP or more in most countries is actually produced in the largest city. And if you, in a country like India, if you add a few of the largest cities together, you will get an even larger number, most likely. So clearly, in that sense, the cities are where the action is. And indeed, new economic analysis has shown that large cities and city regions increasingly are, or could be if smartly managed, the key drivers of economic growth, modernization, innovation, and the linkage to the global economy. And indeed, India, and I'm sure we'll hear more about this, is going to experience a lot of this in the next decades. But of course, metropolitan development also brings a lot of challenges, costs, externalities that need to be addressed. And we believe key aspects of responding to the opportunities and the challenges of metropolitan development are governance, management, and financing of these big urban centers. And so this is what the book is all about, governance, management, and financing. And I will now turn it over to Roy.
So nice to be here today. I have been working in India on and off for so long, and I've learned so much. And there are people in the room who I've learned from. PK, if I had thought about it, now that I look at you, I would have brought that little blue book, and I would have read the paragraph on rich Mumbai, poor Mumbai, and the kind of paradigm, which I always thought was a very good way to do it. On the property tax, Vasanth Rao taught me that you could do new things in this world. And the National Institute of Public Finance has been a leader in thinking about this for so many years all over the world. And I'll just take one more moment and tell you, some of you may not know that I started my work at the IMF. And I went to the director of the IMF and he said, "What research do you want to work on?" And I said, "I want to work on city finances." And he said, "Why in the world would you want to work on something like that? Because it's not mainstream enough." And so we didn't. But out of that time, he planted me in a division where my boss was Rajiv Lall, who civilized me in terms of how we think about decentralization. So it's good to be here, and it's good to be here with a lot of friends. Johannes said the book took us 20 years to write. Let me give you another perspective on how long it took. When we started, I sat in a World Bank office with a division chief, and the two of us chose Johannes Linn to become a young professional at the World Bank. And that's when we started. And when we finished, he was a vice president at the World Bank. That's how long it took for us to do this work. I wanted to say something just briefly about basic messages by way of sort of a kickoff. And the World Bank actually ran a course on this book, and each author actually made a presentation, and every author had an idea about what were the main messages. And so, and I heard some of those presentations, and of course read all the chapters. And if you wrote down what the authors thought were the main messages, it would fill the book. So there's a lot of stuff in each of these chapters written by experts. What I'd like to do is just give you, in my